Everyone. Just gonna wait a minute or two, let everyone join, and enjoy the music while you wait. If you're here, maybe you can pop a little hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Always nice to see how connected we all are. In the Netherlands, people in London, Oslo, from the Wirral, from Edinburgh, one of my homes. New York, the Midlands. I never really know where that is. Cornwall, North Wales, Germany. Beautiful. People from Ireland, my other home. Start to turn off the music. And just as you're arriving here, as you're landing, let's get a little finger on the pulse. How is everyone doing? Scarlett, love that. Tuning in from the cozy bed. Maybe one word in the chat that shares how you're feeling, just so I can get a sense. And while you're thinking about that one word, I can share a little bit from my end. I've been feeling really excited all day for this, but also nervous, anxious. Definitely nervous about the tech, but excited about the sense of community. Frazzled. Yeah. Starting to down-regulate. Stressful day. Frazzled, that resonates. Stretched. Apprehensive. I really appreciate that. Sad, excited, exhausted. Ready. Tired. Very fair. We're at the midweek point. This is turning the corner. Okay. Hopeful. Nice. Yeah, we've got some people just feeling content, neutral. Wonderful. All right. So let's start. Thank you for showing up. Thank yourself for showing up. It's challenging to get people to come on live. And I know that people have lots of reasons why they can't. and there will be a recording available. So if you're on this live, you can just relax, you can enjoy it, you can let this watch over you. You know that you'll have the recording if you want to go back and make any notes. And a few people on this call will know me, have worked with me maybe. Some people might have no idea who I am. So when I was preparing for this session, it's all about sort of stress regulation, how to use your nervous system, work with your nervous system at this time of year, this holiday time that can be really stressful. I was thinking about ways that I can build this container to gain your trust. And one of the ways I could gain your trust is through getting, showing my credibility. And I could introduce myself and I could tell you a bit about my story and my background and how I've studied neuroscience, and I have a PhD in dementia research, and gain your credibility and your trust through sharing the fact that, don't worry, I have knowledge and I have wisdom. I'm doing that a little bit right now. But actually, I'm going to take a slightly different approach on this call, and I'm going to try to gain your trust and your credibility over the course of the hour. Earn it. And by the way, trust isn't something that you give away easily. So you feel like, I'm not sure. Somebody said apprehensive. I love that. I respect that. You shouldn't be giving your trust away instantly. But the way I want to gain your trust is not by telling you what nervous system regulation is, because to be honest, you could find that information anywhere on the internet. But instead, I would rather be authentic and find some way of relating to you through showing you. So we'll have some time for discussion. I'm hoping that we keep this to about an hour, and then plus discussion time, maybe 10 minutes. So we might go a little bit after 8 o'clock. If anyone has to go early, that's fine. You'll get the recording. If you want to stick around and chat, then we can do that at the end. And I will talk a little bit about theory, and I'll show you some slides. We'll use that as kind of anchors throughout the webinar. But if you're expecting to gain wisdom, if you're expecting to gain a sense of calm through sitting here with your pen and paper, and maybe you're watching the recording on double speed, you're trying to consume as much information as possible and maximize the productivity, it's not really the intention behind this session. I'm not going to go into depth and explain what the stress response is. I'm not going to cite every research paper. I'll refer you to some resources. I'm actually really excited to show you a model that I think will really help. Slower approach. Okay, I really want this space to be a space of safety and support, mix of theory and practical tools. So we've done a little bit of an icebreaker. Everyone's shared in the chat something about where you're calling from. It's one word you're feeling right now. I'm going to invite you to do another icebreaker. I know people hate icebreakers, but again, this is really important to build the container of safety. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask anyone to speak. But what I am going to do is I'm going to unpin myself for a minute, and I'm going to give us gallery view. And I'm going to invite anyone who's comfortable doing so, just for a moment, to turn your camera on. And if you're worried about how you look, or you're in the middle of doing something, that's okay. If you would rather not, that's okay too. It's only going to be for a minute. You can turn it back off again. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me. The reason why I want people to do this is just to take a minute. This is one of the practices we're going to do, right? Look at these faces. Everyone's here, I'm assuming, because we're stressed. We're trying to learn how to be a bit less stressed. And maybe there's one particular face that you can see right now that you're particularly drawn to. They can't tell. They don't know where you are on the screen, and you might just look at that one face and just take a minute to think, whole person, that tiny little square on my screen, who's dealing with the same thing that I'm dealing with. It's different, but you know, we're all human. We're all craving safety. We're all craving connection. We've all got purpose and drive and things that we're working towards. We've all got stressors and traumas and experiences. And just as you're looking, maybe you found that one person. Notice what's happening right now in your own body. Totally normal if initially it's been a bit of a heart rate increase because you're like, oh, I don't want to be seen. That's uncomfortable. But maybe there's a sense of settling into some calmness now. You're looking at those faces, or that one face. You're just relating to another human. And it's so common that we're experiencing stress right now, especially this time of year, coming to the end of the year. There's a sense of pressure. We have to get things done. Or a lot of expectation, family dynamics, time pressure. Let's see what's happening right now in your body. Maybe like as I give you that just permission to be stressed, maybe that's enough to think, oh, actually, it feels good. I feel a little bit of relaxing, a little bit of calm. A little bit of housekeeping before I can share my screen and talk you through some things is from this point on, cameras on or off. If you're more comfortable turning them back off, you can turn them back off. Okay, that's the discomfort over. But I really invite, sometimes it's really difficult to be the one doing all the speaking and not getting a sense of how's this landing with people. So I would love even just little one words in the chat or little emojis or a response. If there's a point that I say that really resonates or a question that you have, then write that in. Okay, let me know. I'm going to go back to speaker view now. I invite that because it's actually a way that you can support each other's learning. So in particular, if there's something that I say that really resonates, a little saying, write that because it's really interesting to see what resonates with other people. We're going to have question time at the end. So if you have any questions as well, just drop them in as we go. Maybe if it works, I'll pick them up as we go. But really just like you'll get out of this what you put in. So engage. Okay. Introductory spiel, how you pronounce it, over. I'm going to share my screen now. I did create some lovely transition graphics on this, but I got nervous about sharing them and it going wrong. So we're just here with a stagnant PDF. Can people see that okay? Maybe a little message in the chat. Love the hat. Yeah, okay. That's as far as my creative skills go on Canva. Okay, we're going to start with a practice straight away. Those of you who've worked with me, you'll be familiar with this. Those of you who haven't, I do want to add the disclaimer that the body is not a safe place for everyone. So I really, in this space, I'm not one-to-one with you. I can't be checking in with you and asking, how is this landing with you? So there's a really little bit of like having to, I'm going to trust you that if any of this gets overwhelming or too much, just open your eyes, look around the room, and just orient yourself, ground yourself in that way. I did have a question from somebody who was a coach. And so there's some people attending this and watching it back. You might be coaches and therapists and looking to use this work to support your own clients. And I think that's fantastic. I'm happy to share. But I do just want to add a disclaimer that that's not really the point of this webinar. It's not to tell you how to use this with your clients. It's how to use it on yourself. And we have to be practicing what we preach. So this is an opportunity to just practice on yourself first. So everything that we do has a purpose. Here's how we're creating a little bit of space in the bodies. We're going to create some safety. So one way to do that is through grounding and orienting. And we orient ourselves in the room. One is using the senses. You can use any of the senses to do it. I always start with the eyes because they're the most important sense. They get top of the hierarchy. Communicate directly to the brain. So you can do that by just starting to move your eyes around the room that you're in. Just notice, what kind of pace are you moving your eyes at and your whole head? What's the rhythm to it? Is it quite jittery? Are the eyes moving and the head is still? And if so, can you just lead with, I like to say lead with your chin. Lead the movement with your chin. Just let the eyes follow. Really focus on like everything that you're taking in right now. A little bit of a realization of like, wow, a lot of visual input. You can notice like I've got a bright light right here to light up my face. It's actually very stimulating. Where are your eyes drawn? What object are they drawn to? If you're watching this on the recording, you're skipping through this. This is the doing. This is the work. This is the regulating. Look all the way back over one shoulder, okay? All the way back to the wall behind you. Maybe take a breath here and then come back to center. And then all the way back over the other shoulder. Taking a breath. Back to center. What we're doing there is that our brains are threat detecting all the time. And when we're super stressed, that threat detection mode is just really on alert. So one of the ways that we can soothe that part of the body, that part of the brain, that stress response, is to look behind and say, there's no threat back there. Because your reptilian brain, your lizard brain, basic ancient brain, it doesn't know the difference between the stress of an email and the stress of a lion. People throw that comment around all the time, but it's true. So you're just sending as many signals as you can to that part of your brain. No threat. If you feel safe to do so, you can close your eyes. Maybe your eyes have closed already. Maybe you just want to take a soft gaze, not really focusing on anything. And here, I just want you to go to a place in the body that feels safe. Give you some examples. Maybe your feet on the floor, your hips on the chair, in your hands. Some people feel safe in their head. can change each time where you feel safe. I mean, if you're in a part of the body now, let me ask you, what is the quality of that makes it feel safe? What is the sensation? Is that sensation like a heaviness? Is it a looseness, a collapseness? Maybe it's an openness. Maybe it's kind of an energy, a fizz. Maybe you're getting like a visual image of some colors or some imagery, some shapes. What is the sensation? When you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes, slowly come out of that. And here's the invitation for engagement. So you can write in the chat, what did you notice? What was interesting to you? What stood out to you there? And if you found it really hard, it's okay. And if you didn't connect to it at all, that's okay. Not everything has to be big insight. Sense of warmth, a sense of presence. Yeah, sometimes you go to places where you think, oh, that's unusual. Someone going to the chin. Like a self-hug with the arms crossed, pressure. Warm, buzzing energy in the hands. See how it's different for everyone? Someone saying, I was so distracted, I couldn't do it. That's perfectly normal, especially if this is something new. It's a skill that just takes some time to build. Warmth, heaviness. And just notice, you don't have to share this, but even just those sensations that you're noticing, maybe ask yourself, are they kind of pleasant? Are they unpleasant? Or are they just neutral? They just are. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the kind of coaching that I do, just really briefly. I call it neurosomatic coaching. Now, you could argue that that is just mind, body. Neuro is brain, nervous system. Somatic, it's kind of body. It's more than that, but for the sake of now, it's just body. And so what I do is I combine my background in neuroscience and studying a lot of the theory with these practices that help you connect to the body in a way that regulates your nervous system, okay, and creates sustainable change. That's all coaching is. Coaching is just supporting someone to create change. You can break it down linguistically. Neurosomatic coaching. It's not psychotherapy. It's not cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, that's working with your cognition, your thoughts, your behaviors, kind of actions. This is more like working with your sensations. But I call it mind body. It's really important. It's not just body coaching, because I still really believe in the power of mindset and working with the mind. So we kind of work on this, we've got this, we're always so focused on the signal from the mind to the body. We don't really spend much time on thinking about the signal, the body back to the mind. So I spend a little bit more time working here. And I use this language of nervous system because I really feel like the nervous system is the link between the mind and the body, because the nervous system doesn't just happen up here in our brain. Okay, the nervous system extends out throughout the whole body, connects to the whole body. A little bit of drawing on the screen here. I'm not sure why that is, but it's not too distracting, hopefully. So this is the theory that I am really, really excited to teach you. It's basic, okay? But I promise you, the way I'm going to teach this to you, I really don't think you're going to forget it, okay? There are so many different models and theories and ways of describing stress and the stress response in the body. Okay, and this is just kind of one way of describing how the brain works and then what happens when you're stressed. And I'm going to get you to kind of participate in this. And you'll see there I've said optional homeworks if you really want to sort of lay down these neural pathways, this learning, this model. After the call, go teach this to someone. Go describe it to someone else. That's the best way to learn. Teach. It's from Dr. Dan Siegel, I think his name is. He's a psychiatrist, quite famous in the space of mindfulness. You work in that realm, you've probably heard of him. But what I love about this is you'll always have it with you. So if anyone's heard of neuroplasticity, anyone heard about that? Like the brain's ability, capacity to change? This is, it gives people hope, you know. The brain can change. I can lay down these new pathways. And so this is a model as well that gives you hope because it can help you to self-manage. Knowledge is power in that way. So I'm going to invite you to do this with me. Here's your arm. Take up your arm like this, right? Camera's on or off, it doesn't matter. I'm watching it on replay, it doesn't matter, but actually get your arm here. Okay. Disclaimer, this is very much an oversimplification of how the brain works, but it's a useful starting point. So I want you to imagine that your arm is your spinal column. Okay, that's the spine going down into the body. And this is what carries the messages from your brain to the rest of your body and from your body back up to your brain. Okay. So does anyone know when you're stressed, you might have a sore tummy, or you might have butterflies in your tummy? You might have a tightness in your chest. Some people might even have like distress, like GI, gastric distress. And people experience things like diarrhea, constipation when they're stressed. Some people, their hunger, their fullness, their eating behaviors go haywire. That's because all of those parts of the body, they all have neural tissue. They all have nervous system bits in them. When you're heartbroken and you feel pain in your chest, it's like you have nerves there. The pain is real. So this spinal column, this is what carries the messages from body to brain and back again. And then this part, this kind of wrist and the bottom of your palm, this represents your brain stem. So you might have heard of people talk about your lizard brain, the reptilian brain, the most ancient part of your brain. I think this part of the human brain is like 300 million years old. And that is responsible for all the basic functioning that keep you alive. You know, it controls your breathing. It's working when you're not thinking. This is a really important part of the brain that's involved in the stress response. This is when people talk about the fight or flight response, or you go into freeze. That's all kind of this part of the brain that's controlling that. Now I want you to take your thumb and wrap it across like this. Now, ideally, if we had another thumb, it would be like this because it represents both sides of the brain. But for simplicity, we've got one thumb. This is your limbic system. This is the emotion center of the brain. Notice that this is really close to that brainstem. So it's a really close relationship in communicating with that basic functioning part of the brain. So your emotions and your basic functioning are really closely connected. Then I'm going to fold my fingers down. Okay, and all this top part of my hand, that is called your cortex, like the wiggly bits. See that diagram there, the wiggly bits on the brain. This part of the brain is very important for kind of like all your executive functioning, all the things that make us human. This is like the most recently evolved part of the brain. And then this part here, kind of where my fingernails are, that's the prefrontal cortex, right at the front of your head. This is like your thinking brain, your rational brain. We work a lot with, we're living a lot in this part of the brain is amazing. It's incredible. It's what allows us to do so many things. But sometimes we're a little bit too focused on this part of the brain. We forget about all the rest. The brain works best when all these parts are integrated and they're nicely working together. So the brain is a series of networks. That's how it works. When we are well rested, when we're not stressed, when we're moving our bodies and we're well fueled, it all works together really well. When we're not, aka when we're stressed, right, these basic parts of the body, they get really, really loud. There's a lot of activity happening there. And this rational thinking prefrontal cortex goes offline. Okay, so do this. It's called flipping the lid. You flip the lid. And when you're in this state of stress and overwhelm, the emotion center, the basic functioning, the fight or flight response is so loud that you can't think rationally. It's gone. It's offline. It's not integrated. And usually we're trying really, really hard, and we're guilting and shaming ourselves for not being rational. And we're trying to bring this down, but it's not working. The way to get this part of the brain back online is that we have to soothe and we have to work with the other parts of the brain. Okay. This fight or flight response that's happening without your prefrontal cortex. That's happening whether you like it or not. I'm sorry, but just by being human, you have signed the contract that will happen. So this is really important when we think about stress, because if we regulate the system first, if we work with these parts of the system first, then you can bring the rational mind back online. You can think a little bit clearly. You can see the options that you have. Yeah. Let me get a little pulse check. How's that landing with people? Maybe a little nod or a little note in the chat or a little question. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, some people doing some research. This is a really useful model. If anyone works with kids, it's like a really useful way of explaining it to kids. But what works for adults usually, or what works for kids usually works for adults too. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people in education have heard of this. Good. So I'll share an example from working with clients this week. There's something in the air right now where people are stressed. Christmas, this season, makes sense. And when we're stressed, we struggle to see all the different options available to us. Our brain, again, safety mechanism, this goes offline and our brain goes into, I only see black and white. I only see yes or no. I only see to go all in or not do it at all. And we don't see the other options. So if we can just work with soothing this part of the body, this comes back online and we can be like, there's actually more space, more options available to me. Exactly. So if people are like, when I'm stressed, I forget things, I'm really scatterbrained, that's why. Yeah. You got to work with this part of the body, bring this back online. All right. Some of you have done this before, but it's worth practicing again. here's a really cool way that I can show you from the body how you can create a sense of space. Okay, remember what I told you earlier about the eyes, and the brain prioritizes inputs from the eyes, like in the hierarchy, it's right up on top. So this is one thing that you can do to feel a sense of space. What I want you to do is just turn your head all the way to the left as far as you can. And now what I want you to do is flick your eyes left and see if you can go a little further. And then come back to center. Okay, let's try the same thing on the other side. So turn the head all the way to the right, and then flick your eyes off to the right and see if you can turn further. And then back to center. You can do the same thing going upwards. You can pop the head back as far as you can, and then flick the eyes looking up to the eyebrows, and I bet you can go a little further. Were people able to, did that work for some people? Were they able to find more space? Maybe a nod or a yes, yeah. It's because we always are dependent on, we prioritize the signals coming from our muscles into our brain, but there's other signals coming into the brain, and we can work with them. We can use them to our advantage. So tuning into the eyes as the visual signals, a lot of really interesting, it's the work of functional neurology. People who are recovering from any injury to their nervous system, they do a lot of this kind of work, and work that works with their proprioception and their balance. What that also does is it just gives us a sense of, oh, there's actually more space than I think. Okay, a little bit of myth busting here. Before we do, actually, invitation to share. I know you said, yeah, you felt more space, but if there's anything else that you want to share from that you were aware of, then do. Maybe it didn't work for you. I really value and appreciate when people say, didn't connect, didn't work, didn't resonate. And it helps me get a sense of what's landing. Okay. Nervous system regulation. I'm going to fly through this. Just 3 points that I want to tell you. The biggest myth about nervous system regulation is people think that to have a regulated nervous system is to be in just a constant state of calm, to always be in control, to always have my emotions managed. That's not what regulation is. What being regulated is having the ability to allow yourself to move flexibly in and out of these states. I've said states of arousal, because I use that language on purpose, because it takes away a bit of moral judgment. You know, we think about being stressed as such a bad thing. Stress is just a thing that is, it's a constant. You know, it's like death and taxes. Like, you are going to be stressed. Stress is a really, really healthy thing. What's not so healthy, and what a lot of us struggle with, is we stay in that stress response. We don't allow ourselves to shift out of it again. So what we're building the skill is to allow ourselves to come up into the stress response, but then come back down out of it again. And if your question is, how the hell do I do that? Yeah, that's the thing. It's the thing that we're learning. And you do that by bringing conscious awareness to things that are happening unconsciously. So remember our hand model, and remember this kind of brainstem part that's responsible for all the unconscious things that are happening. You can bring your awareness to those things just by bringing awareness to it. Sometimes there's something you can do to relieve that pressure, that stress. This part comes back online, and we're integrated. We're feeling regulated again. Okay. These next couple of slides are a little text heavy, but I'll go through them quite quickly. So nervous system regulation, right? That's the framework that I use to help people with stress. And you'll have heard maybe of all these different models of your window of tolerance and getting into all these, working with your vagus nerve. And these are all different ways to work with stress. I remember when I said neurosomatic, that's the kind of coaching that I do. And I said somatic, it's like the body, but it's a little bit more. And so I just want to tell you a little bit more about what it is now. Soma means whole, wholeness. So yes, it's your body, it's your physical body, but your soma is also your sensations, temperature that you might experience, energy that you might experience. It's also your emotions, happy, sad, anxious, anything in between. It's also the thoughts and the stories that we tell yourself. It's your soma is also your mind. It's how you are in relationship with other people. It's how you behave in the world. Okay, so soma and body, yes, they're kind of the same, but they're just looking at the body from different perspectives. Body is often thinking about outside in. You know, you go see your GP and with an ailment, a physical ailment, and they'll look at what's wrong with you. And often, not all the time, but it's what are the physical symptoms and what's the treatment. Whereas this is about experiencing from the inside out. Your body is not an object. It's like an internal thing that you sense. And the somatics, I want you to think about it as it's like psychology. It's this umbrella term that captures all these different practices and approaches and theories. And it just goes to show that you are more than your mind, you are more than your thoughts. And a really good example for this actually is when a person has dementia. When a person has an illness that impacts their mind, are they no longer a person? Do they still physically exist? They're still an organic being, matter, living in the world, just differently. So somatics is basically about, we're really good at thinking. Yeah, how many of us are overthinkers? Like, I know I am. We're usually not as good at the feeling and the sensing. So all we're trying to do is build that skill of the feeling and the sensing. And the other important thing is that to acknowledge that not only are we these physical matter bodies that are trying to regulate ourselves, but we also exist in a context, in a family context, in a wider societal context. We exist in a point in history. You know, if we exist in context to the land, a physical nature, we might have a certain spiritual or religious context. And that is incredibly important because what is regulating for one person might be triggering for another. You know, I don't know your story, your history, your relationship with different parts of the body. So something that really works for me, breath work really works for me, it might not really work for you. So again, that's just like taking that. When people give advice on social media and they're telling you, do these 10 things to regulate, maybe they work, try them, but don't punish yourself if they dysregulate you. You've got to just find what works for you. Okay. A lot of talking, and I'm going to go into a practice now. So how's that landing? Any questions? Remember, yeah, anyone who has, remember those little nuggets, if there's anything that kind of stood out to you, you can write that down too. And just take that minute. We're going to shift. You've probably been pretty heavy in your thinking mode right now. Learning, engagement. I'm going to get you to shift mode now into your being, into your embodiment mode. I'm going to take you to another practice. So when people talk about experiencing stress, you'll often hear the word cortisol being thrown around a lot. And you might have heard of the HPA axis. So when we encounter a stressor, by the way, let's say that without adding any moral value to it, a stressor could be exercise is a stressor on the body. You know? A stressor can be good for you. An email could be a stressor. Argument with a loved one could be a stressor. Being in an overstimulating environment, sensory overload, stressor. And when we encounter a stressful event, our body's natural reaction is kind of explained through this, what's called the HPA axis. It's a network that connects different parts of the brain and the body. H is the hypothalamus, P is the pituitary gland, and A is the adrenal gland. And the system kind of sends signals using hormones as messengers. And so just briefly, remember our hand model. Remember that thumb, that's roughly where that hypothalamus is. It's really tiny, small structure in the brain. Kind of like the size of an almond. Imagine that, it's only the size of an almond. The thing that detects so much of the stress. It's just above the brainstem, so that's why we go into this fight or flight response, because they're so closely linked. This is the responder. This is the part of your brain that's like looking out for the threats all the time. And what it'll do is it'll send a signal to the pituitary gland. It's a tiny gland just underneath it. That's only about the size of a pea. And then it gets, so your hypothalamus tells it, we're stressed. And it's like, all right, okay, let me go release the relevant messengers. And then that'll send that signal all the way down your body to your adrenal glands, the A, and they sit on top of your kidneys. So see how the stress response is happening in the body? You know, it's because it is. It's a full body experience. And then the adrenal glands, they release hormones that communicate back up to the brain to say, hey, go on alert, we're stressed. So our practice today is about gently noticing these parts. And just having an opportunity to recognize like the stress, the presence of stress within us. So this is the point where you might just want to take a breath, feel a bit of space. Maybe there's a little bit of movement that you want to take. You might want to close down your eyes or just take a soft gaze. Just noticing the surface beneath you. Points of contact, what's supporting your body, what's holding it right now. And I want you to gently bring your awareness now to that hypothalamus. So that little space, if you were to go in between your eyes and then go deep into the brain, that little almond. Even just as you are in that part of the body, maybe you can notice any sensations that are there. So maybe there's a sense of tightness, sense of heat. Maybe you feel quite neutral about it. Maybe you feel quite relaxed. Just take a moment, whatever comes to you there. And you might even imagine that there's a calming, sort of soothing light coming into this space. Something that represents safety, calmness. And it's sending that signal to the hypothalamus. Good job. You're detecting threats. And I'm just letting you know that there's safety here. Now see if you can let your awareness move just a little lower into the center of your brain now. That little P, that pituitary gland. It's the command center. It's the one who takes that message from the hypothalamus and sends the signal. Tells the body what to do next. Again, you can send it the same message. You don't need to be in alert mode. It's safe here. What I want you to do is see if you can kind of feel, sense, or imagine traveling all the way down the spine now. Till you get to the lower back. You're kind of off to either side of the lower back. Should correct. It's a little bit, it's not right down at the base of your back. Your kidneys are kind of, if you imagine where your sort of lungs end, the bottom of your lungs, they're kind of just beneath that. It's kind of your mid to lower back. I just want you to imagine these little glands sitting on top of your kidneys now. Again, as you bring your awareness to this part of the body, just notice what's present there. Is there any tension? Something else? Maybe a sense of activation, or maybe there's a feeling of being quite grounded. Just observing the sensations. Don't need to change them. You don't need to do anything about them right now. Yeah, if they feel calming, if it feels like a nice place to be, you can stay there. And again, with just each breath, just imagine that they are just receiving this signal of calm. Maybe again, you picture that kind of soft, that warm light, that sense of peace. Your whole body, it might be softening a bit now. And if it's not, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of this, just open your eyes. Just come back out. Any activation, just allow that to settle. And now take a moment. Kind of imagine that signal to relax is traveling back up the spinal cord, back up to the brain. So it's this loop of communication. It goes from brain to body, but then the body comes back up to the brain and says, nothing to stress about. You can stay calm. The flow up and down. And just before we start to finish this practice, just see if you can expand your awareness out to the rest of the body. Are there any sensations that you notice? Just take note. You don't have to do anything about it. And then when you're ready, maybe you want to take another breath in your own time. Just gently bring a little bit of awareness back in. Maybe wiggle the fingers, move the body. Slowly open the eyes. Take that room around you in again. Ground, orient. Another way you can orient, I was talking to a client about this today, is you can orient yourself in time as well as in physical space. So just that, okay, it's nearly 8 p.m. on a Wednesday or different time if you're watching the recording. the 27th of November, winter season. It's dark outside. 2024. Nearly got that wrong. Thinking about yourself on that whole spectrum of time, expanse of time, millions of years that have happened before, and who knows what's the unknown that's ahead of us. That's a good way to orient yourself, locate yourself. So, you know what I'm going to ask? A little share. Maybe one word, maybe a sentence. How was that for you? What did you notice? And how stressed are you now? Don't have to answer that one, but just check in with yourself. Like, how stressed am I now? It's okay if you're still stressed. Again, we're building this skill. And this is just a constant practice of coming back. You know, a lot of people saying that when ready to go to bed, felt sleepy, like your brain slowed down. Okay. Just to orient everyone to time, it's almost an hour now, and I'm just going to go for another 5 minutes, and then I'm going to offer 5-10 minutes for discussion. All right, here we go. Here's my ask of you. This webinar really is just an offering. It's a support. But I would really love to ask something of you now, and that is to give me some feedback. Right now, you can do it. You can scan the QR code. If you are in a state of Zen and you're like, I don't want to do any of that, that's fine. I'll send a follow-up email and I'll have a link. But anyone who fills in this little bit of feedback for me, I'll email you a recording of one of the practices we've done. Because it really helps me. Again, what I said, this is a two-way communication. It's like, as the mind and the body is two-way, communication between you and I is also two-way. And I wanted to share this quote with you from a client that checked in with me. I think it was maybe last week. And I just think that what I really want you to know, and those of you, I know some people on the call, we've worked together previously or are currently working together, is that I need you to know that this works. Yeah, that what we're doing right now on this call, this is the doing. And this is the affirming, like, safety and trust. Remember, like, when that prefrontal cortex flies offline, way to bring it back online is just affirming that safety. And that's the work that we do. Like, this client is talking in particularly about their relationship with body and food, that they've learned that during our work, just how important safety and trust are. Body. And the thing is that we judge ourselves so much. This angel devil cognitive thinking mind is like, you shouldn't have these struggles. Doesn't matter. You can't rationalize yourself out of these struggles, but you can work with the body, and then you can bring that part of the mind back online. And that's a lot of what I help clients to do. If anybody is interested in working with me, I have some spaces between, probably expect these spaces will fill up by the end of the year. Anyone who is on this webinar or is watching the recording, I am going to offer a discount. I actually didn't mean to plan. I know that Black Friday is this week, and I did not. It was unintentional that I planned this webinar on this week. Because really I want to offer it as I know that this is a difficult time of year. Okay, this is a time of year where money is tight, where people are more stressed, and where the environment is different. A lot of people have issues around food and their body. They can come up a lot this year. So this is my offering. If anybody wants support, if you want to reach out, then please do. Again, that's a little QR code that'll take you straight to my WhatsApp. But if you're signed up to the webinar, you'll get a follow-up email. You can contact me that way. You can contact me on any platform. I'm really just looking to support people at this time. And I'm really so passionate about this work, this nervous system regulation work, being the foundation of so much change work that we can do. And so anyone who I can support in that, I want to do that. Okay. If anyone has to dash off, then that's no problem. But I did want to have some time for discussion, for Q&A, basically. I wanted to refer you to, so I run this podcast with Holly, who is a fellow coach and also a neuroscience nerd. She has a master's degree in neuroscience. And that is where we get into the nitty-gritty, talking about theories of the brain. So that's definitely a resource that I would point you towards. And if there's anything that you want us to discuss on that, then please message me, let me know. But just here now on this call, I'll stick around for another 5-10 minutes. If anyone has any questions, then pop them in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for now. I'm going to have a look at the chat and see what people are saying. Okay, a couple of people have to drop off. The podcast is called Nervous. Nervous. It's on Spotify. Oh, I've sent that directly to somebody by accident. Yeah, a couple of people are just popping off to bed. Fair. I'm actually not sure if it's on Apple Podcasts, Charlotte, but it should be. So if it's not, maybe you could message me and let me know, and I'll look into it. And yeah, recording of the webinar will be sent. Okay, here's a really good question. So somebody's asking, remember about this brain model? And when that prefrontal cortex goes offline and we see things as black and white, how do you take a step back and see other options? What you have to do here is you have to work with that regulating this part of your system first, because the only way you're going to see other options is when this comes back, when the thinking and the executive functioning comes back and you have the space and you can think a little bit more clearly. But you can't do that when you're stressed and anxious. So it's about these practices that we do, bringing yourself back to a state of calm. And it's also about having a little bit of patience, creating a bit of space. Like, it depends on what the problem is, what the circumstance is. Like, often there is not a clear way. One of my mentors in somatic work, she calls it the sacred third way. How do you find the sacred third way? And you do that by creating space. Space in your whole nervous system, space in your body. Think about when you're when you just are not stressed, when you're feeling integrated, things are flowing and working. Somebody asking, why do I feel like the physical signs of stress are contagious? Whether that's someone who is stressed and makes you feel stressed, or whether that's Black Friday advertising. Yeah, really good question. Quite simply because we're social beings. And our nervous systems, remember I said we exist in a context? Well, our nervous systems also exist in a context of other nervous systems. And they are communicating with each other. So as much as things are happening below our level of conscious awareness, like they're communicating, our nervous systems are communicating with each other. So you know how at the beginning I asked everyone to turn on their camera and we all looked at each other. Like that was a way of bringing conscious awareness to the fact that like, we're all humans here connected. So to a degree, yeah, stress is contagious. If you're surrounded by people who are stressed, it's going to be really hard for you to regulate. Doesn't mean it's impossible. And being aware of that, then you have a choice, you know, in certain things you can be like, okay, those external stressors, how can some things you can protect yourself from, you know, Black Friday advertising is something to a degree you can protect yourself from. So how can I put myself in environments and around people who bring a sense of calm? Well, someone saying that the podcast is on Apple Podcasts, so it's good. And we're actually recording, took a little break and we're recording season 2 tomorrow. So Sophie, I love this question because somebody asked, I would really like to do more reading. Can you recommend any journals or articles? Yes, I can. But I think that question that's like saying, "Ooh, psychology is interesting. Can you recommend anything in psychology?" It's huge. It's like, what do you want to know about? Yeah. I also kind of want to challenge the question a little bit and think, is that the part of you that is learning and reading about it rather than actually doing it? So, and if you feel a little bit like, I mean, yes, but also I want to read about it, that's fine. If you feel a little bit challenged by that question, that's okay. But I can point you towards some people in the space in this world of somatic coaching. Richard Strozzi Heckler is one. Stacey Haynes is another person. The Hakomi Institute is another practice. Anything around, there's a lot of crossover between psychotherapy and somatic work. And so sensory motor therapy is an area. You know, if anyone's heard of like EMDR therapy, a lot of these body-based methods are things that you can look up. The Body Keeps the Score is a really popular book in this realm. I would say it's quite dense. It's quite like academic. So if that's what you're looking for, great. But if you're looking for like, well, what are the practical actionable tools I can have? That's maybe not the place for you to start. Do I think some people's nervous systems are more receptive? Yeah, I do. I think that we all have different levels of resilience. And that's just our history, you know, how we've been brought up, what kind of tools we have. So I think some people learn by being very open, you know, like people pleasers, like our nervous systems are constantly looking for like, what's everyone else doing and how can I just conform? Some people's nervous systems are less receptive because they've learned like that's a way to keep myself safe, is just like not be engaged in other people. So it's not a good or a bad thing, but yes, people are different. And again, it's not just your family history, your individual trauma. It might be like the fact that you're a woman. our nervous systems are operating a different way to a male nervous system. We're looking for different threats and different triggers. All right. So I'm aware of the time. It's nearly 1:15. I'm going to end it there. I do see a couple of comments around the podcast not being an Apple podcast, so I'll look into that. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for participating in the practices. You're watching the recording back. Thank you as well. And any questions, you know where I am. Have a good evening, everyone. Ciao.